If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm Kathryn Hansen, your host, and today is the question and answer show for June. I've received a lot of good questions this month, and before I get started, I just want to remind you that nothing that I say in this podcast or these Q&A segments should be taken as medical advice or nutritional advice. You're always advised to seek medical attention from your doctor for anything concerning that you're experiencing. What I'm teaching here in this show is meant to empower you to stop binge eating, but it's all based on my own opinions, and it's not, again, to be taken as medical advice. Today's question actually has a couple of parts to it, and I think by addressing these two parts of the question, it's going to cover a lot of the questions that were submitted to me. I think that there was some general themes in a lot of the questions, so if this is not specifically your question, I hope you'll still find the discussion relevant and helpful. The question for today's show is from Courtney, who said, "I've been so up and down with recovery, and now I'm back to full binging and over-exercising. I find that when the binge urge arises, it lasts for so long that I don't know what else to do but to give in. I hate that I keep doing this, and I hate that I can't stop. I'm really at a loss at how to finally recover." Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to break this down into a couple of parts because I think both parts are very important. First, I want to talk about what she said about how the binge urges last for so long that she doesn't know what else to do but to give in. First of all, Courtney, I just want you to know that you're definitely not alone in this. I've seen this in other questions that were submitted and also just working with people who have the binge eating habit. And it's not just people with the binge eating habit that experience urges to do something and persistent urges that won't go away and that make you feel like you just have to do that thing to make the urges go away. I mean, this is a very common theme throughout all habits. I mean, think of smokers or people who have trouble with alcohol. I mean, they'll do well for so long or maybe use willpower for several days, and then they feel like it's just so persistent, that desire to do it, what their brain has been conditioned to do, that they just do the thing to make the urges go away. And that's a big part of the Brain Over Binge approach. A big concept that I teach is that the urges are the one and only cause of binge eating. And you could say that about a lot of habits, and I'm not an expert at all other habits. I'm focusing just on binge eating here, but if you did not have the binge urges, Courtney, I'm sure that you would not binge. It's the urges that are compelling you to do this behavior that's causing you so much pain in your life. And I definitely know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to feel like you just want to get some relief from that desire, from these urges that just seem to be distracting you from what you're trying to do and just really won't leave you alone. And in the moment that you decide to binge, you're just trying to get some peace. You're just trying to make that go away. The problem is, though, it does not give you peace. And as you're seeing, it's leading to consequences in your life. You said you hate that you keep doing it. You hate that you can't stop. So even though it feels like in that moment that you want to get relief and that binging is going to be the solution to give you relief, it doesn't actually work. You know, you might feel that temporary relief in the moment, but then it leads to all these consequences and you wish you had not done it. And I think that's kind of the first thing to see for anyone who's experiencing this type of issue is that you're seeking relief from the urge, but when you get that relief, you have to be honest about the consequences you're facing, that it's actually not worth it to you to get that relief because it's causing pain in your life, it's causing suffering, it's ruining your health, it's ruining any opportunity you have for a normal life. So that relief that you get is kind of a false relief. It's just relief from the urge and it doesn't actually solve anything in your life. It makes everything in your life worse. But I'm not just telling you to kind of suck it up and deal with the discomfort and grit your teeth and bear it. I'm not saying that at all because we can only do that for so long. I mean, we're human and we don't want to feel that discomfort. So the idea of my whole approach is to make the urges less uncomfortable And that's where dismissing the urges comes in. If you've listened to the podcast, you know that I use the term dismiss binge urges. You're not resisting them, you're not fighting them, but you're dismissing them, which means you're allowing them to pass with detachment. You're basically observing them. You're seeing them as not a part of you. You're seeing them as separate from your true self because they're coming from that lower primal brain center and they're automatic and they're just faulty brain messages that, you can learn to step back from and observe and allow to pass without getting all caught up in them. So that would be my first piece of advice for dealing with this issue, is seeing if you can move from a fighting the urge type of approach to more stepping back and separation from the urge. And sometimes that can take practice. And it's not something you can force yourself into doing. It's by diving into these concepts and learning what you can and just getting a better understanding of all of this and how your brain works. It's something that can naturally happen. So she actually mentioned in her question too that she's gone back to the first episode of the podcast to try to just remind herself of these concepts. And I do think that's a good idea. Try to listen with an open mind and try not to really force anything, but just allow that insight to occur. Now I'm going to move on to the next part of Courtney's question, and I want to talk about when she said, I'm really at a loss of how do I finally recover? And Courtney, it seems like there's just a lot of confusion there, and you feel like, okay, maybe I've tried this, and maybe you've tried a lot of approaches, and it just all feels like a mystery. And I definitely know what it's like to be in that situation, and you feel like you need to find the thing that's going to finally help you. But I think that when recovery does feel like a mystery, we can risk jumping from approach to approach and never really solidifying what we're trying to do. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I think my best advice would be to try to keep things as simple as you can. And there's really no magic in recovery. There's not this one thing that you're going to find that just makes it all disappear. Because when it comes down to it, the things that you actually need to do are to not act on those urges to binge and also to eat enough. In the terminology that I use, you need to dismiss the urges to binge and you need to eat adequately. But really, in any approach to overcoming binge eating, it does come down ultimately to those two factors. I mean, I know that there's a lot of different treatments and ways to approach this, and there's a lot of emotional components to how some people treat eating disorders and a lot of nutritional components. But if you're acting on the binge urges, you're not going to recover. If you're not eating enough, if you're depriving yourself, if you're getting yourself in that starvation state, you're not going to recover. So no matter what else you're doing to try to help yourself, you still have to not act on the urges and you have to eat enough. So when people start to feel overwhelmed in recovery, I tell them to come back to those two things and realize that that's ultimately what you're working toward. So look at those two goals and think, what could help me move toward those two goals? What could help me dismiss the binge urges? What could help me eat adequately? And the answer that you come up with may be different from the answer someone else comes up with. You can seek any sort of help that you think you may need. You can get any sort of medical help you think you may need or nutritional advice that you think you may need to accomplish those two recovery goals. But what I'm trying to say is just that when things become overwhelming, just bring yourself back to what you actually need to do to recover and then work towards solutions. Even if you can do one positive thing to bring yourself toward one or both of those goals, then you're moving in the right direction, and you can keep moving in the right direction until this habit is out of your life. And because I've mentioned eating enough or eating adequately, I do want to mention, Courtney, that that's something you can definitely look at if you feel like these urges are so persistent and they're not going away. No matter what you do, there could be that element of the survival instincts in there. If you are restricting your food intake, if you're not giving yourself enough food, yes, those urges are going to feel stronger. They're going to be harder to resist, and no, they won't go away. So if you try to apply the advice that I'm giving you here, know that if you're not eating enough, it's not going to work. That's a big piece of this for a lot of people, and I don't know if it's the case for you, but I just want to mention that as sort of a closing point for you or anyone else listening who just feels like the urges are overwhelming, that if you're not eating enough, then of course they're going to be overwhelming. So make sure you're feeding your body well. And like I said, you can get help and support in this area if you need it. Courtney, I really hope that this discussion has been helpful to you. I hope you've had some good takeaways from it. I hope you can start experiencing these urges with more detachment and feeling less uncomfortable and just allowing them to pass, and then really being excited about not having to experience that discomfort that comes after the binge. I have one announcement before I end the show today, and I hope that this will help you if you're experiencing issues like I talked about in this show, or just kind of struggling to apply these concepts in your life. I'm going to soon be offering what's called coaching audios. These are basically daily coaching sessions. There are 14 of them that you can listen to over and over that keep you focused and keep you motivated and remind you of important concepts. And these are actually one piece of the Brain Over Binge Independent Study course. But I'm going to be releasing them separately for podcast listeners and really anyone who may not want the full course but may want these little daily coaching audios to keep themselves on track and keep themselves going in the right direction. They're short audios, just about 5 minutes long. You can listen to them in the car. You can listen to them on a walk. The audios are focused on the 2 recovery goals of dismissing urges and also eating adequately. I don't have an exact release date yet, but there's a link in the show notes today that you can click on and you can sign up to be notified when they're available. And if you sign up to be notified, I'll also send you a special discount when they are available right to your inbox. So if you think that these daily reminders and these daily coaching sessions would be helpful to you, then just go ahead and click that link and I'd love to tell you more about them and send you that special discount. I'll also have more information about the coaching audios in a future show. That's all for today's episode. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you got a lot out of the discussion. And as always, I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.